Hmm. Heavy.
Good morning. It looks like someone named Jennifer has joined. Hi, Jennifer. If you could change your name to your first and last and who you're appearing on behalf of, and then just mute until the hearing starts.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
Sure. So on the picture, there should be 3 dots above your picture. If you click on that, you can rename.
No, I have nothing above my picture.
1 second. Might look different on mine.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Johnston, Ms. Whitman. I also see we have on the call Ms. Reed with U-Haul. Is that correct? And Ms. Hazlitt with PUC's Transportation Department. Is that right? Okay. Can everyone hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Great. And Harriet, are you on the call and ready to go?
yes, I am.
Wonderful. Before we dive in and I call the case, I wanted to speak with Mr. Johnson and Ms. Whitman, whether you've had any communication with the respondent in this matter.
Your Honor, we have sent the email on file with the commission, our exhibits, but we have not received any response from the respondent.
So you've had no communications with the respondent whatsoever.
We've only had one-way communication, nothing coming from them. That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any reason to believe respondent did not receive the, well, actually, as I'm looking at the CPAN, it looks like there's some kind of a signature dated May something.
Your Honor, the CPAN was personally served on the respondent, so for certain he received that
Okay.
CPAN.
Okay. And then I made sure our certificate of service for the notice of this hearing was sent to the 2 addresses we could find for respondent and was also emailed to the email address that we had for respondent. So to my knowledge, respondent should have received it and been aware. So given that, we will go ahead and proceed and make a record of that. And I will have the commission present its case.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, let me go ahead and call proceeding number 23G as in grape 0227 T as in Tom, O as in open. It is rapid response, Melvin Tolliver doing business as Rapid Response Towing and Final Notice Towing. Could I please have appearances?
Good morning. I am Jeremy Johnston, Assistant Attorney General with Colorado Department of Law, bar registration number 54424. I'm joined by Senior Assistant Attorney General Heather Whitman. Today, we are representing transportation staff of the Public Utilities Commission. Today, we'll be presenting 2 witnesses that are both present, Aaron Hazelent, a criminal investigator with the Public Utilities Commission, and Jennifer Reed, who works for U-Haul. Also present on this call is Lloyd Swint, who theoretically could be a witness, but I do not expect so today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. For the record, we don't appear to have anyone appearing on behalf of the respondent, Melvin Tolliver. A review of the record reflects that Mr. Tolliver was personally served with a copy of the CPAN itself. There is a signature a line that appears to be his signature on the acknowledgement line of the CPAN. In addition, our certificate of service from the commission indicates that the notice of this evidentiary hearing was sent to 2 different addresses we had on file for Mr. Tolliver and Rapid Response Towing. And finally, our certificate of service also indicates that the notice of the hearing was served on Mr. Tolliver and Rapid Response Towing at an email address that we had on file for him. So through all those 3 forms of notice and notification of this hearing, I believe we can proceed because it appears that Mr. Tolliver was given appropriate notice of the hearing and has chosen not to appear either on his own behalf or as represented by counsel. One question for clarification, is it Rapid Response Towing or is it Final Notice Towing? I see both on the CPAN and I wasn't sure, is he operating under both names or is one more accurate than the other?
Your Honor, the business is operating under the name Final Response Towing. That is a doing business as name for Rapid Response Towing.
So Final Notice Towing.
Final Notice Towing is the doing business as name.
Okay.
The entity as is registered with the Secretary of State is Rapid Response. Rapid Response Towing and Recovery, I believe. And I will point out Rapid is spelled with 2 P's as it's filed with the Secretary of State.
2 P's?
That is as it is filed with the Secretary of State, yes.
Response,
Okay.
please. Yes.
Okay. That's unusual. All right. Okay. Mr. Johnston, Ms. Whitman, are you then prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I will ask, did you want to make any kind of opening statement, or you just want to go ahead and call your first witness?
We will waive our opening, Your Honor.
Okay, please call your first witness, Mr. Johnston.
The transportation staff calls Jennifer Reed.
Ms. Reed, if you would go ahead and raise your right hand with me. Please leave your camera on. Oh, I now see you in two places. So if I hear, I'm just concerned that we might have an echo, but let me make sure. Ms. Reed, if you go ahead and raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Ms. Reed, you're muted, so if you could please unmute. Okay.
Okay, I think I have you here.
Okay, let's try that one more time. Do you
Okay.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you. Can you please introduce yourself and spell your name for the record?
Sure. My name is Jennifer Reed, JENNIFERREED, and I work in the regional office for the U-Haul company.
Thank you. How long have you worked there?
30 years.
30 years. What is your job
Yeah.
title?
Traffic control manager.
What do your job duties include as a traffic control manager for U-Haul?
A lot of it has to do with distribution of equipment, but a very large portion of my job has to do with stolen equipment, recovered stolen equipment, or recovery of stolen equipment, and picking up missing equipment, bringing it back to the company.
So that finding of lost equipment or stolen equipment, does that ever involve interactions with towing companies?
Absolutely.
And through your job at U-Haul, did you have any interaction with a tow company going by the name of Final Notice Towing and Recovery?
Yes, he reached out to me.
All right. And what was the name of the individual that you dealt with from that company?
His name was Melvin.
Melvin.
I don't know what his last name was.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about your interactions with Final Notice Towing and Recovery. And I want to start on February 24th of 2023. Can you describe your interaction with Final Notice Towing on that day?
Sure. The final notice on that day, I was traveling down Havana on my way to work, and I passed a U-Haul van on the back of a wrecker, and it wasn't one of ours. I wasn't familiar with it. So I turned around and followed him, and we came to our store at 615 South Havana was where he was parked. So when I pulled in and asked him what he was doing with our van, he was like, oh, excuse me. He's like, I'm sorry, excuse me. He was like, I'm coming here because this is where I come to get paid. And I was like, what do you mean you come here to get paid? Who told you to even tow this van? And he's like, U-Haul told me to tow it. I was like, well, that's my responsibility. And I didn't speak to you. So who told you to tow this van? And at that point, it became a little jumpy and like, well, it was towed from a property. And he really just didn't have any good explanation, except for the fact he felt it was on a bad contract. And he just feels that he should have towed that van. Luckily, it was on a bad contract, but that could have been a horrible interaction if that was a customer on a valid contract with that van. Then it turns out he listed the property name on the receipt. So I went by that property to try to figure this out. And that property is posted for Max Towing, not the Colorado roadside truck that he drives around in, and not for the final notice receipt that he gave me. So at that point, I reached out because none of this makes any sense.
Okay. So I want to jump in and unpack a few of the details that you just mentioned.
Sure.
So my first question is, you mentioned that you first saw the vehicle on Havana. What city and state was that in?
That'd be Aurora, Colorado.
Aurora, Colorado. And you mentioned the markings on the vehicle. How is the vehicle marked?
Which vehicle? The towing vehicle or our van?
The towing vehicle. Yes, ma'am.
The towing vehicle, it shows that it's marked for Colorado roadside posse, and then also has a PUC that I assume associates with Colorado roadside.
Gotcha. And the individual that you spoke to, who was that?
That was Melvin.
Melvin. And you mentioned the property that was listed on the receipt where the vehicle was towed from. Can you describe one more time identifying the towing carrier that actually serviced that address?
It was Max Towing. It's a property near the intersection of like Parker and Havana. And so I drove by that. It's a condominium complex on the receipt, and it's posted that Max Towing tows for them. So he had no right to even, be towing from that property realistically.
Okay. So were there signs for Max Towing at that
There
location?
were. Mhm.
Okay. And did you receive an invoice from Mr. Tolliver at the conclusion of this interaction?
I did, I sure did, and it said it was for final notice towing.
Final notice towing. Okay, thank you. And how much did Mr. Tolliver charge U-Haul for that tow?
It was just over $300. I believe it was 301, if I remember correctly.
Did he make any
Just-
statements?
I'm sorry.
Did he make any statements to you about negotiating the price of the tow?
Yeah, he told me it was my best interest to go ahead and just pay him on scene, because if he towed my van to his yard, the prices go up substantially from there.
Okay. And you mentioned that you saw the vehicle and thought it was suspicious. Can you describe why you thought it was suspicious?
Because I work pretty closely with all of our vendors, and we only have a couple of vendors that tow in Denver, and I'm familiar with all of their trucks, you know, the colors, the decaling. So it was just suspicious because there was a truck that I passed by and couldn't recognize that was towing our van, and that's just not the case. And if
Okay.
it was truly like a Wyatt's or somebody like that towing it, they wouldn't have stopped at our Havana location. They would have gone directly to their yard if it truly was, you know, being towed for illegal parking.
Okay. And if anyone from U-Haul had authorized that tow, who would it have been?
It could have been through our equipment recovery department or a regional office, but everything is notated. So that way there is no confusion if the customer calls in or if another party picks it up. And there was nothing notated in this contract. He had called nobody.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And you mentioned the vehicle was marked with the company name Colorado Roadside Posse. Did
Mhm.
you contact that company?
I did contact that company because I was trying to, you know, make sense of this whole thing. Because I didn't understand. I realistically thought maybe he was stealing from Colorado Roadside Posse, that he worked for them and was writing his own invoices. So I reached out to Colorado Roadside Posse, who, after a couple transfers, put me through to a person who said, no, he doesn't work for Colorado Roadside Posse. He had bought the truck from Colorado Roadside Posse, a used truck, with the understanding that he was going to take that imaging off.
Okay. All right. And we talked about the name on the invoice that you received from Melvin was Final Notice Towing and Recovery.
Correct.
Prior to this day, February 24th, 2023, had U-Haul had any interaction with Final Notice Towing and Recovery?
I believe before February 24th, there was one other invoice that kind of randomly we had paid, that he'd reached out to us for $100. That's the only other time we'd heard, you know, I'd heard from him previous to this.
Okay. And at that time in February of 2023, did you remember this interaction prior?
No.
Okay. And that prior interaction, what was the value of that invoice?
That invoice was $100, and I didn't even know it was the same person because I met him in the showroom.
Okay. And is $100 a large or a small amount for by towing standard?
That's a small amount. You know, it was what I considered a fair amount.
Okay. All right. And that previous tow, had anyone from U-Haul asked him to perform that previous tow before February of 23?
He called me about it. He gave me the unit number and asked if it was on a valid contract. I guess he'd found it at a homeless camp, and it was not on a valid contract. And we have other people that reach out to us. We have citizens, you know, people trying to help out that reach out. So at that point, I told him it wasn't and asked him if he could tow it in.
Okay. All right. Did U-Haul ever have a contract with Final Notice Towing and Recovery?
No, we did not.
Did U-Haul ever have any kind of business agreement with Final Notice Towing and
We
Recovery?
did not. We did not.
And we've mentioned a couple other towing companies. And I just want to clarify whether U-Haul had relationships with them. Colorado Roadside Posse, did U-Haul have any sort of business agreement with them?
We do not.
And Max Towing, the company that actually operated in the place where the February 23 vehicle was located, did U-Haul have any sort of business agreement with them?
We do not.
Okay. And Rapid Response Towing, did U-Haul have any sort of business agreement with that company?
We did not.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had done a little bit of your own investigation by calling Colorado Roadside Posse. Did you do any research on whether final notice towing and recovery had a valid PUC permit?
I did ask one of our other tow vendors. I guess they have some sort of system where they can look into PUC, and they did inform me that no, his PUC had been revoked due to lack of insurance.
All right. And after you learned that information, after you talked to Colorado Roadside Posse and learned this vehicle wasn't operated by them, did you make any decision about reporting this tow to the Public Utilities Commission?
Yeah, I did reach out and I filled out the form online. I just feel that, something was just very suspicious about this entire thing.
And did you communicate with an investigator from the PUC?
I did. You guys, or the PUC reached out to me and we corresponded back and forth by email and by phone.
Okay. Can you describe that sort of initial exchange with the investigator?
They asked some questions about the vehicle he was driving, the name of the company, how this whole interaction took place. I provided pictures and I provided some responses back and forth between us to show what I was, what my concern was.
And did you provide invoices and maybe some other documentation to the investigator?
I sure did.
Okay. And after you reported final notice towing to the PUC, was that the end of U-Haul's troubles with this business?
It wasn't, because at that point, I feel we were kind of victimized. Unfortunately, we have deep pockets, and I feel that he took advantage of that, still going after U-Haul equipment and still, with this whole, I'm going to pick this up. You should really just pay me on scene, get a better deal. Until finally, when you guys or the PUC reached out to him, he immediately stopped contact with us.
Gotcha. After February of 24, were there tows conducted by Final Notice Towing and Recovery of U-Haul vehicles in March of 2023?
Yes, there were 3 or 4 that were taken care of that we did in March.
Great. So I want to start with March 6th of 23. Okay. Did Final Notice Towing tow any U-Haul vehicles on that day?
They're all not for that day. He just did the invoice on that day, but yes, there were 2 trucks and a car dolly.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Reed, could you repeat that? You said there were 2 trucks and what else?
A car dolly, a 2-wheel car dolly.
Thank you. I didn't hear what you said. Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Apologize for interrupting.
All right. And so those March 6th invoices, did you interact with Mr. Tolliver in regard to those invoices?
Yes, because I had to meet him and bring him a check.
Okay. Where did you meet him?
At the Havana location again. I didn't feel comfortable with him coming to our actual office. So I just found a nice neutral place to meet him.
So that's the U-Haul location in Aurora. Is that accurate?
It's 615 South Havana, yeah.
Okay. And did you interact with him personally on that day?
I did. I'm the one who actually paid him.
All right. Can you describe that interaction with him?
He was waiting in the showroom for me. He had this invoice. Again, nothing is really is nothing itemized out. It just had 3 pieces of equipment listed on there and a total with, once again, the whole, you should pay me at scene. I'll meet you here. I need to have a check today. And if you pay me now and you don't come to my yard, it's a lot cheaper for you.
Okay. And did U-Haul receive all the vehicles on that day, all 3?
They were actually previous that we received them. That's the first day he could meet me to get payment for them.
Okay. What days did he actually conduct the tows, to your knowledge?
Unfortunately, it was previous to that. I don't have those dates because he wasn't listed on the invoice.
Gotcha. Okay. But the actual payment occurred on March 6th.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because it's odd for us to make 3 payments in one day on one invoice. Usually with any other tow that we do, it's by the tow. So that way all the charges are broken down correctly.
Okay. And the payment for those tows, why is it that you felt you needed to pay for them?
Well, I didn't want any sort of retaliation from him about bringing stuff to my yard, taking stuff back from us. I was really just trying to keep peace with this person.
And had U-Haul authorized any of those tows?
Again, he would ask us if the equipment was valid. We would tell him yes or no, and then he would just tow them. He would tow them. But again, it had that caveat behind it of, okay, we're going to tow them, but these are the conditions I'm going to tow them under.
Gotcha.
We have to meet me. We can't ever go to my yard. And that was just another thing that threw up a red flag. If you have a yard, why can't we ever go there?
So he made some specific statements about not wanting you to go to his tow yard.
Correct. It was always, you need to pay me at Havana, or you need to pay me, as soon as I have the equipment, which, we paid for 3 in a day. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have been able to go to his yard. Obviously, he towed these previously. He didn't want payment that day, but it was always that understanding of, you can't come to my yard. It's always cheaper if you don't come to my yard.
Gotcha. So he had towed these vehicles on days previous. But you said this was the first day that you were able to meet with him.
Correct.
Was U-Haul asking to meet with him previous to March 6th?
Yeah, as with any person, if you tow something of ours, just like any tow company, they're not going to bring you back your piece of equipment until they have money. That's security they're going to get paid by. And he brought this back previously, and then he couldn't meet me till several days later because he was busy or had other things going on.
Gotcha.
So that was a little odd. And again, offered to go by his yard and just drop off a check for him. But there was, again, this, you can't go by my yard. My yard, things are more expensive. I'll just meet you. I'll meet you at Havana. So it just didn't add up.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I want to move on to March 15th of 2023. Did you have an interaction with Final Notice Towing in Melvin Tolliver on that date?
Yes, for a U-Haul van.
Can you describe that interaction, please?
The same thing again. He found a van, he towed it for us, and I had to meet him off property, and he gave me an invoice. I gave him a check for that service.
And you may have just said this. What kind of vehicle was it on March 15th?
It's a U-Haul van,
Gotcha.
like a cargo van.
Thank you. And again, you met at the U-Haul location on Havana.
That's correct.
This time, did Mr. Tolliver make any statements about meeting at his lot?
I don't think that came up between us, but at this point, it's kind of clear we're never going to meet at his lot.
Gotcha.
He made that pretty abundantly clear on these other interactions.
Okay. And now I want to move on to March 20th of 2023. Did Final Notice Towing and Recovery tow U-Haul vehicle on that date?
Yes, a pickup truck.
And did you interact with him on that day?
Yep, I brought him payment once again.
And was it sort of the same deal that he would call
Yeah,
and say,
needed the Havana location. Yeah, so it's same thing over and over. And then it was shortly after that PUC must have reached out to him, because literally I heard from him one more time and he made it very clear, like, I don't want to tow this vehicle for you. I just want you to know where this vehicle is. Like, the whole demeanor changed. Like I said, he was like, I don't want to tow it. I'm not trying to tow this. I just want to let you know where this vehicle is. It's in a bad area. It could be super questionable. And I knew PUC had reached out to him at that point, because like I said, we did a 180 of, I'm going to tow this and you're going to pay me without coming to my yard, to the whole like, oh, I'm just trying to be really friendly and let you know where this is.
Gotcha. Okay. So these, the 3 tows for which there's an invoice that you received on March 6th, and the tow on March 15th, and the tow on March 20th. Did you inform the PUC investigator of these tows?
I did.
Okay. And did you also provide the investigator with documentation related to these tows?
I did. I provided her with a copy of the check and a copy of the invoice.
Okay. And can you describe your communication with the investigator about these later in time tows that happened in March?
Again, PUC reached out, asked what documentation that we had, what evidence that we had. I sent this forward. At some point, I don't remember if it was this point or a little bit sooner. Like I said, I sent pictures of the tow truck that he was in. And I sent copies of our text records and his phone number, to show how the phone number doesn't match the invoice. The one that I paid for by Square, I sent a copy of the Square receipt to show, like, just nothing matches. If you own a company, your company's name is on your invoice and on your Square receipt and things of that sort. And this, nothing matched.
Okay. Great. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the documentation. Could we bring up what has been marked as Staff's Exhibit 100? In this read, I'm going to have you look at some exhibits that we intend to admit in this hearing. So let me know if you can see this.
Yeah.
All right. What are these communications?
This is the email communication that I had back and forth with my investigator from PUC.
Great. And did you send and receive these emails as part of your job at U-Haul?
I did.
And do they contain information related to the tows by Final Notice Towing and Recovery?
They do.
And are these emails dated?
They are.
Your Honor, I would move to admit this as Exhibit 100.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnston. There being no respondent, we won't have any objections today. So hearing Exhibit 100 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you. And now I want to look on page 1. So the email dated February 28th, I think it's the middle of the page at 11:15 a.m. Do you see that email, Ms. Reed?
I do.
And do you recall receiving this email?
I do.
And did you receive it shortly after you reported that first, I guess, the tow in February to the Public Utilities Commission?
Yes, they reached out pretty quickly.
Great. And if we could scroll to the top of page 2. Perfect, right there. Ms. Reed, do you recognize that paragraph?
Yeah, I sent that in.
And is that the text of your online complaint?
Yes, it is. About, again, how none of the information matched up.
Great. And that complaint, did you submit it on February 28th of 2023?
I did.
Okay. And next could we move to the top of page 3, please? Thank you. We see in this email that you say, here are the other invoices we paid with some attachments. Is that where you submitted the invoices to Aaron Hazlett?
That's correct.
And if we could scroll down to the middle of this page so we see, perfect. We see on the same day, there's an exchange between you and Ms. Hazlett discussing the total number of invoices, and you're talking about March 6th. So can you explain that email where you say, I see the other two do not have dates?
We had I did, sorry. Or previously. Oh, we were talking about how the other two, because there's the invoice with 3 pieces of equipment on it. And I didn't have the dates when the other 2 were towed because there was no dates on the invoice. All we had was the invoice saying March 6th with the three items.
Gotcha. Okay. And how many invoices in total did you all receive on that day, March 6th?
March 6th, we just received 1 invoice with 3 pieces of equipment on it.
Okay. And do you know why some of the invoices were not dated by the tow carrier?
No, I don't.
Okay. And next, I want to move on to what has been marked as Exhibit 101. Thank you. Ms. Reed, what is this?
I'm sorry, you broke up.
What is this?
That's a picture that I actually took of the record that he drives where it says Colorado Roadside Posse on the side of it. And he's bringing back our U-Haul van.
Where was this photo taken?
At 615 South Havana.
And do you remember which day you took it?
I do not. I would have to look at the date on the photo.
Okay. And did you provide this photo to the PUC investigator?
I sure did.
And does this image, as you're seeing it now, fairly and accurately reflect the photo that you took?
It's exactly the photo I took.
Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 101.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 101 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, you just mentioned it, but on the side of the truck, what is the name printed?
Colorado Roadside Posse.
And is this the truck that you contacted Colorado Roadside Posse about?
It is.
And this is the truck that they told you belonged to another individual?
Correct. They said they sold it.
Thank you. And the day that you took this photograph, who drove this vehicle to this location?
Melvin did.
All right, thank you. And next I'm going to move on to what has been marked as Exhibit 102.
Public or the confidential exhibit?
The public, please. Okay. Ms. Reed, do you recognize this invoice?
I do.
And did you receive this invoice from Melvin and Final Notice Towing and Recovery?
I did.
And in the top right, how is it dated? It's a little bit faint.
2/24 of 2023.
Who gave you this invoice?
Melvin did.
When did you receive it?
I received it on that date.
And does this contain information related to February 24th, 2023 and the tow of the U-Haul vehicle on that day?
Correct. That's the one I met him and paid for.
Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 102. I also ask that the confidential version of this exhibit without the redactions be admitted.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 102, both the confidential and the redacted versions, the public version, will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, what is the company name listed at the top of this invoice?
Final Notice Towing and Recovery.
And whose name is listed next to owner or driver in the middle of the page?
I am. That's the information you took from my driver's license.
Thank you. And can we scroll to the bottom right? What was the total fee charged to U-Haul?
Oops, sorry. 301.
All right. And did that fee strike you as excessive?
It did, because he towed it less than a mile, and it was a same-day pickup. I don't know the exact figures, but I know it should be like 200 and change for the PUC tow amount, and less than a mile with no storage costs. It shouldn't be that high.
Okay. Great. And I guess towards the bottom, do you recognize the signature?
Yes, that's mine.
Okay, thank you. All right, next I'd like to move on to Exhibit 103, or has been marked as Exhibit 103.
All public versions?
Public, yes, please. Yeah, I'll only be asking to publish the public versions today. Ms. Reed, do you recognize this document?
Yes, that's another one of his receipts.
And in the top right, how is it dated?
3/6 of 2023.
Did you receive this document?
I did.
Who gave it to you?
Melvin gave it to me.
And does it contain information related to one of the tows for which U-Haul received an invoice on March 6th of 2023?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 103. I also ask to admit the confidential version 103C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 103, both the confidential and the public redacted versions are admitted into evidence.
Thank you. We've talked about this a little bit, the March 6th invoices. Is this one of the vehicles that we were describing earlier that U-Haul received on March 6th?
Yes.
Okay. And can we scroll to the bottom, please? Thank you. How much was U-Haul charged for this tow?
300 and, sorry, it's pretty faint, $350.
Great, thank you. Next, I'd like to move on to what has been marked as Exhibit 104. Do you recognize this document, Ms. Reed?
Yes, it's another one I paid for.
All right. And is it dated?
It is not.
Do you know when you received this invoice?
Not just by looking at the invoice itself.
Okay. Can we scroll down and give the opportunity to look at the vehicle? Okay. Seeing that information, location of the vehicle, and description of the vehicle, does that tell you when you received this?
Let's see. Do you see? Yes, this was received on, looks like this matches up with March 6th again.
Okay. And the undated invoices, did you receive those on March 6th?
Yes,
Okay. And this is one of those undated invoices.
correct.
Did you all receive any other undated invoices from Final Notice Towing?
I would not be able to tell you without looking at them, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you recall receiving undated invoices on March 6th?
Yes,
Okay, great. And who gave you this invoice?
Melvin did.
All right. And does it contain information related to the tow of a vehicle for which you received an invoice on March 6th?
Correct. It has the truck number on it.
Great. I'd like to move to admit this as Exhibit 104, and I'd also move to admit the confidential version 104C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 104, both the confidential and the public redacted version are admitted into evidence.
Great, thank you. And if we could scroll to the bottom of this exhibit, please. Perfect. How much in the bottom right was U-Haul charged for this tow?
$350.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to move on to what has been marked as Exhibit 105. And Ms. Reed, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it's another receipt from Melvin.
And is it dated in the top right?
It is not.
Is this one of the undated invoices that U-Haul received on March 6th of 2023?
600. Yes,
And who gave you this invoice?
Melvin.
Does it contain information related to the tow of one of the vehicles for which U-Haul received an invoice on March 6th of 2023?
It does. It has the equipment number on it.
All right. And Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 105, and I do not believe there's a confidential version. So just move to admit this one.
Okay, thank you. That was the question I was going to ask you, Mr. Johnson. Exhibit 105 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you. And if we could scroll to the bottom right. A little further down. Perfect. Can you make out how much U-Haul was charged for this invoice?
It looks like $200.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to discuss Exhibit 106, what has been marked as Exhibit 106. All right. Ms. Reed, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it's another document from Melvin.
And the top right, is it dated?
I can't see the top right.
You scroll
But
up.
there it goes. Yep, 3/15 of 2023.
When did you receive it?
It would be on the 15th of March.
And who gave it to you?
Melvin from the same tow company.
Does it contain information related to a tow of a U-Haul vehicle performed by Final Notice Towing on March 15th, 2023?
It does.
Thank you. And if we could scroll to the bottom right, please. Excuse me. Let me move to admit this as Exhibit 106, and I'd also move to admit the confidential version 106C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 106, both the confidential and the public redacted version are admitted into evidence.
Thank you. And if we could scroll to the bottom right, please. How much was U-Haul charged for this tow?
$350.
Thank you. Next, let's discuss what's been marked as Exhibit 107, if we could bring that up. You recognize this document, Ms. Reed?
I do.
When is it dated?
March 20th of 2023.
Did you receive this?
I did.
Who gave it to you?
Melvin did.
Does it contain information related to the tow of a U-Haul vehicle by final notice towing and recovery performed on March 20th of 2023?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 107. I also move to admit the confidential version 107C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 107, both of the confidential and the redacted public version are admitted into evidence.
Thank you. And could we scroll to the bottom right, please? For the, yeah, just a little bit, perfect. How much was U-Haul charged for this invoice?
$300.
Great. Okay, and I think that we can take this off the screen for the moment. Ms. Reed, I want to talk about locations for a moment. We just went through all those invoices and the addresses of the tows vary in different degrees of vagueness. Would you agree with that?
They're very, very vague.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you having conversations with Melvin at final notice towing about where he was finding these vehicles?
No, he would never say what he was finding them. He would just use a vague description like a homeless camp, a bad neighborhood.
Okay. So was he describing generally where he was finding the vehicles?
Not anything like cross streets or almost like, you know, he didn't want us to know where he was towing it from. Like I said, it was just very vague descriptions.
Do you know whether the vehicles were located in Colorado?
Yes, they were located in Colorado.
Did he make any statements to you about finding them out of state?
No,
Did he ever charge you extra because the vehicle was located out of state?
no,
Is it your understanding that all the vehicles were towed from locations in Colorado?
that's correct.
Okay,
He gave me no impression to believe otherwise.
great. And where were all the vehicles towed to?
Well, there's actually two different tow locations. Some were towed to 2322 South Federal, and that's in Denver. And then the others were towed to 615 South Havana in Aurora.
All right. And both of those are in Colorado?
They are.
Perfect. Next, let's talk about Exhibit 108. If we could bring that up, please. Ms. Reed, do you recognize this document?
That's the square receipt that I received for the payment of the van that I picked up.
And in the top left, is it dated?
On the copy I have, I cannot, oh yeah, the top left, February 27th, yes.
And then if you see the square payment, is there a date attached to that specific square payment?
Yes. Or it looks like February 25th.
Okay. And was this payment made as part of your job at U-Haul?
It was.
And does this document the payment that was made to final notice towing for the February tow conducted by that company?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, I move to admit this as Exhibit 108. I also move to admit the confidential version of 108C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Exhibit 108, both the confidential and the public redacted versions are admitted into evidence.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, why did were you the one that made this payment?
I did.
All right, and why is it that you made this payment?
Because this is when I met him at the Havana location when he was towing my van. So I didn't have the opportunity to go pick up a check since I had to pay him immediately. So I just paid him by square.
Okay, thank you. All right, those are my questions about this exhibit. Now I'd like to move on to what has been marked as 109. And if we could scroll through so she gets a chance to look at both checks. Perfect, thank you. Ms. Reed, do you recognize these documents?
Yes, I signed them. I wrote them out.
And the first check on page 1, is it dated?
It's dated on the 6th of March.
Great. And the second check on page 2, is it dated?
It's dated on, I believe it was the 20th of March. Yep, 20th of March.
Whose signature is on both checks?
Those are mine.
And who are these checks made out to?
To final notice.
And did U-Haul keep these checks in its records as part of its business?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit these as Exhibit 109. I also move to admit the confidential version 109C.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Both the confidential and the public redacted versions of Exhibit 109 will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Reed, let's talk about the first check on page 1.
Okay.
Which tows did this check pay for?
I paid for 2 trucks and 1 car dolly.
And is that the payment, the 3 tows that U-Haul paid for on March 6th?
Correct.
Do you remember which date those tows occurred on? Are you aware of that?
No, I do not know which days they occurred on.
Okay.
I know it was previous to March 6th, but I don't know the dates because it wasn't on the invoice.
Gotcha. Did Melvin ever make any statements to you about when those vehicles were towed?
No.
Okay. Do you know which day they arrived at the lot?
I don't, unfortunately.
Okay.
I just know it was previous to March 6th.
Okay. Were you physically present when the vehicles were towed to the lot?
No.
Okay. Is it possible that the vehicles were towed on March 6th?
I don't believe so because I don't know how he would have towed all 3 in a day, and I don't believe he ever towed 3 in a day.
Okay.
These were from previous tows that he did.
And you say the tows you believe happened previous. How far previous are you thinking they happened?
Probably no more than a week.
Okay.
Like I said, he usually wouldn't go very far without payment, but if I wasn't able to meet him or he could meet me, like I said, we had to have this general date, this general meeting date to, I guess, catch up charges. Like I said, it's not on the invoice when it was done, so I would have no recollection of when what day these tows were actually done on.
Okay. But you think that first week of March is when they occurred?
Yeah, he wouldn't go
Gotcha.
very, very long without payment.
Okay. And there is one invoice that's dated March 6th. Did that tow occur on March 6th?
I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure.
Okay. Because the invoice is dated on March 6th, do you think it's possible it occurred on March 6th?
Yes, with that evidence, I'd be willing to believe it occurred on March 6th. I just have no way of defining that was actually the day.
Okay. But the tow company has indicated on the invoice that it occurred on March 6th.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, I'm going to talk about the second check on page 2, dated March 20th. What tows did this check pay for?
A pickup truck and a cargo van.
Gotcha. Okay. And was that the March 15th tow and the March 20th tow?
Give me 1 second. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And great. And Your Honor, I forgot to give myself a check mark. Did I move to admit this?
Exhibit 109, I have it jotted down a note that Exhibit 109 has been admitted.
Okay, thank you.
Let me check with my paralegal, make sure my notes are accurate. Does that sound right to you, Stephanie?
I do as well.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
We are all good.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It's
I'm
hard to
checking them
keep
off as
up.
I go, and I didn't check this once. Just want to make sure.
No worries, Mr. Johnston. I'm impressed with how carefully you're keeping track of everything so far.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Reed, I just have maybe 1 or 2 more questions for you. Do you have any request for the ALJ today about whether or not U-Haul should receive a refund for these tows that occurred illegally?
Absolutely, we'd like to be refunded for them if they weren't tows that were done legally.
All right. Well, Ms. Reed, I think those are all the questions I have for you at this moment.
Perfect.
I guess we don't have a respondent, but the ALJ may have some questions for you.
I do have a couple just very brief questions, Ms. Reed, just a couple things that weren't quite clear to me. I noticed on both several of the invoices and on the checks that there were memos written. I jotted it down. It looked like BE 1735N or BP 3251SR. And I just didn't know what those memos referred to and if it was something I need to be aware of or not.
Those are our equipment numbers.
Okay.
For accounts payable, we have to show what we paid for, and that's how accounts payable would know it, is
Okay.
by what we know it as.
Great. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something I was missing. And then just very quickly, you indicated U-Haul would like to be refunded for the amount. Would you be kind enough to give me the full amount that U-Haul is seeking for a refund?
So it would be the 3 invoices that we had. I apologize, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
So would it be good? Could I add it up this way? The 2 checks plus the Squarespace? So
Yes,
I've got
that would be
so
exactly it.
301 to Squarespace, $900 check and a $600 check. So a total of 1801, if my math
Yes,
is
ma'am.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Johnson, does that sound right to you?
It does, Your Honor.
Okay. Make my life easier later. Okay. Those were my only questions for you, Ms. Reed. I just wanted to clarify those 2 things. Thank you so much.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Johnson, do you have any follow-up based on my questions to Ms. Reed?
Nothing else for Ms. Reed, Your Honor.
Ms. Reed, you may be excused or you may hang out and continue watching the rest of the hearing. Up to you.
Perfect, thank you.
Or actually, before I said, Mr. Johnson, did you have any reason you wanted me to keep Ms. Reed on the line?
No,
if
I
you
don't
need
think so,
rebuttal?
Your Honor.
Okay, so Ms. Reed, you may be
I'm going to
excused
move
then.
on with my day then. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and testimony, Ms. Reed. It's most appreciated.
Thank you
Have a
so
good day.
much.
Bye-bye. Okay, Mr. Johnston, next witness.
And I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Whitman.
Oh, okay. Ms. Whitman, next witness.
Your Honor, staff calls Erin Hazlett.
Good morning, Ms. Hazlett. Would you please go ahead and raise your right hand with me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed, Ms. Whitman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Investigator Hazlett. Would you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, it's Erin Hazlett. And it's spelled E-R-I-N. Last is Hazlett, H-A-I-S-L-E-T-T.
And where do you work?
I work for the Public Utilities Commission for the state of Colorado.
And how long have you worked for the commission?
It will be 2 years next month.
And can you describe for us what your employment duties are for the commission?
I'm a criminal investigator for the Public Utilities Commission with the transportation section.
All right. And what do criminal investigators do for the commission?
We investigate complaints that are filed from the public regarding transportation carriers for the rules and statutes.
And prior to working for the commission, can you describe for us what you did?
I've been in law enforcement for about 20 years. So just highlights, I was an investigator with the United States Air Force, an investigator with the Department of Defense. I was a property crimes investigator with the city of Denton in Denton, Texas, and an investigative assistant with the United States Secret Service.
Right. And have you, in your work as a criminal investigator for the commission, investigated towing carriers as part of your work?
Yes.
And you heard the testimony offered by Jennifer Reed today and generally describing your communications with her and how the investigation got started. Were they generally accurate?
Yes.
As a criminal investigator for the Public Utilities Commission, do you have an understanding about whether the commission requires towing carriers to have an active permit on file with commission before initiating tow of the vehicle?
Yes.
And let's talk about that understanding. Are you familiar with section 40-10.1-4011A, the permitting statute?
Yes.
What do you understand that statute to provide?
That a person shall not operate or offer to operate a towing carrier in intrastate commerce without having a permit with the commission, without first having a permit with the commission.
And do you also have an understanding about whether PUC requires towing carriers to have insurance or evidence of financial responsibility on file with commission prior to initiating the tow of the vehicle?
Yes,
Okay, and are you familiar with section 40-10.1-1071 Colorado Revised Statute?
yes.
And what does that statute provide?
That each motor carrier shall maintain and file with the commission evidence of financial responsibility.
All right, I'd like now to move and discuss your investigation. When did you first become aware of Mr. Tolliver and the situation with U-Haul?
March 23rd of 2023.
And can you describe for us how you got involved in this investigation?
I was assigned the investigation by my supervisor.
Okay, and what were the first steps that you took when you received this file?
I went over the complaint filed by Jennifer Reed with U-Haul, reviewed the documents that she submitted, and called her regarding the complaint.
Okay. And after you talked to Ms. Reed, did you have the understanding that the respondent performed more than just the one tow that was in the initial complaint?
Yes,
Right. And after you talked to her, did you ask her for any documents?
yes, I asked her to supply me she had said there was a photo that she took of the tow truck, and I asked for all the invoices and checks and payments made regarding the additional payments and the initial February tow.
Okay, let's talk about the documents you received, and she sent those to you.
Yes, she did by email.
And right, and are these the documents that Mr. Johnston generally went through Ms. Reed with in exhibits 100 through 107, or really 102, 107?
Yes.
All right, let's talk about them. I want to talk about the invoices first. Let's pull up exhibit 102 if we could, please. Thank you. Is this one, how many invoices did you receive, Investigator Hazlett?
Six invoices I received.
Okay, 6 invoices. And we won't go through each one of them, but let's just look at this one. This is February invoice, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it's really hard to read, but yeah.
Right. Now, some of these invoices are undated.
Mhm.
How were you able to determine the dates that the tows occurred for each of these invoices?
I first asked Jennifer Reed about the undated invoices, and then eventually I contacted the respondent, Melvin Tolliver, and asked him about the undated invoices, and they both identified the date as March 6, 2023, as both invoices that were undated.
And so for the undated invoices, that's how you backed into the date that occurred. Is that right?
Correct.
And then for the invoices that are dated, did you conclude then that the tow occurred on the date indicated in the invoice?
Yes.
Did you try to also confirm that with Jennifer Reed?
That's the impression I got from the conversation I had.
Okay. And did you talk to her about, and we won't go through her testimony again, but did you talk to her about generally what occurred with each of these tows?
Generally, yes.
Okay, what was your understanding about what happened?
My understanding was that Melvin Tolliver contacted her on each tow, saying that he had found a U-Haul vehicle, asked if it was on a hit list of some sort, and then towed it to her for money to be paid at that scene.
And were all of these vehicles owned by U-Haul?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have an understanding from Ms. Reed about where Mr. Tolliver was finding these vehicles?
From my understanding, he was finding them around different apartment complexes in Denver or in Aurora, Colorado.
All right, and were you able to determine which company towed these vehicles?
Final Notice Towing and Recovery.
Okay, and how did you draw that conclusion?
It's on the invoice, and that's what she told me also.
Right. Okay, and let's just stay on exhibit, and if we could scroll down, did you review each of these invoices, and we'll use this one as an example?
Yes.
Okay, did you review and see whether or not the information that's supposed to be included on a towing invoice under commission rules was on this invoice?
Well, no.
Okay, is it compliant with commission rules?
No, it's not.
And Ms. Reed talked about the charges during her testimony. And using this invoice as an example, did you look at, and I realize this isn't in the CPAN, but did you determine whether or not the charges that were made by under this invoice to U-Haul were compliant with commission rules?
They were not.
All right, let's now look at Exhibit 101. And I'm going to ask you, as you were reviewing these documents that were forwarded by Jennifer Reed, were you attempting to determine that Ms. Reed's story matched up with the documents and her account of what happened?
Yes.
All right, so this is Exhibit 101. Is this a document that Ms. Reed sent to you?
Yes.
You reviewed it?
Yes.
Okay, and after you reviewed it, what did you conclude?
That her story that the tow truck had markings for Colorado Roadside Posse matched the photograph that she supplied.
All right, and then let's look at the checks that and the payments. Let's pull up exhibit, if we could, and take that down, exhibits 108. And is this one of the documents she sent you?
Yes.
And what is this document?
That is it looks like a credit card statement showing the Square payment to the respondent.
All right, thank you. We can take that down. Let's look at exhibit 109, please. Thank you. And if we could scroll through this, please. What are these two documents, Investigator Hazlett?
Those were the checks that Jennifer Reed supplied, showing that she paid Final Notice Towing and Recovery for the tows for the U-Haul vehicles.
All right, so after you looked at all of this information, did Jennifer Reed's story check out to you?
Yes, it did.
All right. And did you conclude at that point that there had been violations by Melvin Tolliver of the commission's statutes?
Yes.
All right. After you drew those conclusions, tell me what you did next.
Well, I then called Colorado Roadside Posse.
And can you describe what you talked about with, let me back up. You know who you talked to at Colorado Roadside Posse?
Yes, I talked to the registered agent with the Public Utilities Commission for Colorado Roadside Posse. His name is Ben Pearson.
Ben Pearson, can you describe for me what you discussed?
I discussed the markings on the truck and whether or not Melvin Tolliver Final Notice had any connection with his company, and if the markings should be on Melvin Tolliver's vehicle. And from what I gathered from that conversation is that Melvin Tolliver used to tow for Colorado Roadside Posse, and then Melvin Tolliver got his own towing company and was subcontracted from Colorado Roadside Posse. And then one day he showed up with his tow truck with Colorado Roadside Posse's markings on his truck without permission.
All right. You have an understanding that these tows, according to Jennifer Reed in your own investigation, occurred in February and March of this year?
Yes,
Okay. Do you have an understanding about whether the respondent worked for Colorado Roadside Posse when these tows occurred?
he did not work for Colorado Roadside Posse for these tows
All right.
in February and March.
Did Colorado Roadside Posse know that these 6 tows occurred?
No,
Okay. And based on my understanding, did you understand whether the respondent had the authority to use Colorado Roadside Posse's markings on his truck while performing any tows, including these?
no. And Ben Pearson even told me that he asked Melvin to take the markings off the tow truck.
All right. Did you have an understanding about who owns this truck then? It doesn't sound like it's Colorado Roadside Posse.
From my understanding, Melvin Tolliver is the owner of that tow truck.
All right. And that he didn't have the authority to put the Colorado Roadside Posse's markings and PUC number on the side of the truck.
Correct, that's my understanding.
All right. Do you have an understanding about why the respondent would put the markings for a company he doesn't work for on the side of a truck while he's performing tows?
I don't know why he did that, no.
Do you know if Colorado Roadside Posse ever even owned this vehicle?
From my understanding, from the conversation I had with Ben Pearson, it was not owned by Colorado Roadside Posse, that Melvin Tolliver owned that vehicle and showed up one day with that vehicle with the markings.
All right. So after you talked to Colorado Roadside Posse, tell me what you did next.
Then I reviewed all the documents relating to Melvin Tolliver's permit, Secretary of State, all the documents relating to
Okay, well, let's start with a
permit
second.
insurance.
Could we pull up exhibit 110, please? And if we could scroll through it, please, while I'm laying the foundational questions. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
That is a Secretary of State certified document for the corporation. It looked like Rapid Response Towing and Transport Incorporated.
Right, and you've testified that while you were doing your investigation, you pulled up the Secretary of State record for this towing carrier, is that right?
Yes,
Okay, and you reviewed this at the time of your investigation?
yes, I did.
Right, and you maintained it in your investigative file?
Yes, I did.
Is it the practice of PUC investigators to review these kinds of documents while performing an investigation?
Yes,
And is it the practice of the PUC to maintain documents like this type of document as part of their business records in the ordinary course of their business?
yes,
Okay, and is this document in substantially the same condition and format as it was when you reviewed it during your investigation?
yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit exhibit 110.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibit 110 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to go back to page 2, please. So if we could scroll back to page 2, and then we're going to look at the document a little bit more. Investigator Hazlett, what is the name of this corporation?
It is Rapid Response Towing and Transport Incorporated.
All right, and if we could scroll down just a little bit, please, to the registered agent section. And who is right there, please? Stop right
No.
there. Under paragraph 3, who is identified as the registered agent for this business?
Melvin Tolliver.
All right, and let's scroll down a little bit more to the next page. Here we go. And this is under paragraph 4. And who is identified as the incorporator of this business?
Melvin Tolliver.
All right. And I would like now to move to page 6, please. All right, what is this document, Investigator Hazlett?
That is a statement of trade name of a reporting entity.
What is the true name of the business?
The true name is Rapid Response Towing and Transport Incorporated.
All right, and we could scroll down a little bit more so we can see paragraphs 2 and 3. What does paragraph 2 describe for us?
It states the trade name under which the entity transacts business or conducts activities.
Okay, and what is the trade name?
Final notice towing and recovery.
And what is the business transaction? What is the description of the business transacted?
It says towing and rec.
Okay, so were you able to conclude then that Rapid Response and Final Notice are the same company?
Yes.
And they're owned by Melvin Tolliver?
Yes.
We can take that down. And this is the business that towed the U-Haul vehicles in this case.
Yes.
I'd like now to turn to Exhibit 111, please. And I would like the redacted version, please, the non-confidential version, please. We'll leave the confidential one. We won't publish it. Thank you very much. If we could scroll this, what is this document, Miss Investigator Hazelwood?
That is our IFMS document.
And what I know that's a shorthand. What does IFMS stand for?
Integrated Filing Management System.
And what does the system provide for the commission?
It's a comprehensive collection of information regarding a carrier's permit.
Okay. And did you review the IFMS for the respondent at the time of your investigation?
Yes.
Okay. And is it the practice of PUC investigators review these kinds of documents during an investigation?
Yes.
And it's your practice or the commission's practice to maintain these kinds of documents as part of the business records in the ordinary course of the business?
Yes.
And are these IFMS in the substantially the same format when you reviewed them last spring during your investigation?
Yes.
Right. I move for the admission of exhibits 111 as well as the confidential exhibit 111C.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibit 111, both the confidential and the public redacted version are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's move back up to the first page, or we are on the first page. I'd like to walk through the document with you. So is this the IFMS commission record for the respondent?
Yes.
Can you tell us what the status of the permit is according to this document?
It says revoked.
Okay. And I'd like to move down to the addresses. So if we could scroll down a little bit, please. Do you see under address information, it has the mailing address, the operational address, the physical address?
Yes.
You see that? Okay. I'm interested in the storage address. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is the record or what is the address reflected in the record?
It says 4956 York Street, Denver, Colorado, 80216.
As part of your investigation, did you look at the issue of whether the respondent has a physical and a storage address?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do?
I went by that location.
Okay. And what did you see?
I could not confirm that that was his storage lot. There was no signage. It did not appear to be a storage lot. It was an industrial area. Yeah, I could not confirm that location.
All right. And you're generally familiar with commission rules with regard to signage, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And would the respondent need to have had some signage up to indicate where his storage lot was?
Yes.
Okay. Let's scroll down to the next page, please. All right, who's the designated agent?
That is Melvin Tolliver.
All right, and it appears that this respondent at one point did have a commission permit, is that right?
Yes.
And what's the permit number?
It is T-05306.
Okay, and then let's look at the subcategory information. Can you tell us when the permit would have been issued and when it was revoked?
It was issued on February 7th, 2022 and revoked June 28th, 2022. All
right. Going back to exhibits, the invoices and the testimony of Jennifer Reed, which are exhibits 102 through, and I'm talking about the towing invoices. We can pull them up if you need to see them. 107. Can you tell me whether or not the respondent had a valid commission permit when he performed these tows?
No, he did not.
Right. And what would have been the status of the permit when he did perform the tows in February and March of this year?
The status was revoked.
All right. Let's move down to a little bit, scroll down just a bit, and I'll tell you when to stop. If you could stop there, please. Do you see related firm information there?
Yes, I do.
What's the name of the related firm?
Rapid Response Towing and Transport Incorporated.
Okay, so is it your understanding that the respondent was operating under final notice as his trade name?
Yes.
All right, and I want to get into why the permit was revoked. So if we could scroll down a little bit, please, and let's get to the insurance information. If you could stop there, that's great. Thank you. Do you see the insurance information here?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you tell me what the effective and cancellation dates for the insurance are?
The effective date was February 3rd, 2022, and the cancel date is April 29th, 2022.
Okay, and so when the respondent performed these tows for you all, or he towed the U-Haul vehicles in February and March of this year, did he have an active insurance policy on file with commission?
No, he did not.
Right. Well, let's scroll down to the next page, please. And I'll stop there. Thank you. This is the show cause Article 16 information. What does this information reflect?
That there was a show cause hearing for his insurance because he didn't have, or his insurance was canceled. So they had a show cause hearing for him to bring the insurance information, and it
And
was
what was the
revoked
result of the hearing? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking over you. Did you finish?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, what was the resolution of the hearing?
That his permit is revoked.
All right, let's, thank you. We can take that down. Let's look at Exhibit 112. And we can scroll down. What is this document, Investigator Hazlett?
That appears to be the document that is sent to the carrier telling them the permit was issued.
Okay, and is it the practice of investigators to review documents like this and maintain them in their project files during
Yes.
investigation?
Yes.
And it's the practice of the commission to maintain documents like this as part of their business records in the ordinary course of their business.
Yes.
Okay, and is it an accurate copy of the permit?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 112.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibit 112 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I ask, is 112 does not have a confidential version, it's just the
No.
one version, correct? Okay, just to be clear. Thank you.
Have one copy. Thank
Okay.
you. And to backtrack to the IFMs, did I move to admit the confidential version of Exhibit 111? If I didn't, I would so move now.
I believe you did, but just to be clear, let us restate that Exhibit 111, both the confidential and the public versions, are admitted into evidence.
Thank you very much. Miss or Investigator Hazlett, when was this permit issued?
The permit is issued on February 7th, 2022.
All right, how long, when do commission permits or total permits expire?
They expire after a year.
All right, but in this case, the respondent's permit was revoked before it expired. Is that right?
Yes.
We can take that down. Let's move to Exhibit 113, please. And I would like the redacted version published, please. Thank you very much. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
That is a letter from the insurance company to the commission stating that the insurance policy for the carriers will be canceled.
All right, and did you review this document as part of your investigation?
Yes, it did.
And You kept it in your project file?
Yes, it is.
And it's the practice of, it is your practice to maintain and keep documents like this in your file, when you're in the course of an investigation?
Yes,
And it's the commission's practice to maintain documents like these as part of its business records in the ordinary business? Did you
Yes.
hear? Okay, I didn't hear an answer. And it's this is an accurate copy of the document you reviewed.
yes,
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibits 113 and 113C.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibits 113 and 113C, the confidential and the redacted public versions of Exhibit 113 are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Ainsley, you indicated earlier when we were laying the foundation for this exhibit that shows that reflects the cancellation of the respondent's insurance. Can you tell us when was the last date the respondent had an active insurance policy according to this document?
it looks like the policy was canceled on the 29th of April, 2022.
Thank you. We can take this down. Let's now move on to exhibit 114. And if we could get the redacted version published, please. And Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
That is a letter sent to the carrier notifying them. I'm sorry, what?
No, that's okay. Is there a date on it?
Yes, it looks like May 9th, 2022.
All right, and we'll get into what it says. Let me get it into evidence first. Did you review this letter as part of your investigation?
Yes, it did.
You maintained it in your file?
Yes, it did.
And is it the practice of PUC investigators to maintain documents like this in their investigative files as they're doing their work in an investigation?
Yes,
And it's the practice of the commission to maintain documents like this as part of its business records in the ordinary course of its business?
yes,
And is this document in the same condition or about the same condition as when you reviewed it?
yes,
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibits 114 and 114C.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibits 114 and 114C, the confidential and public redacted versions of Exhibit 114 are admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Investigator Hazlett, what does this document, what information does this document give the respondent?
it notifies them that the insurance policy that was on file with the commission will be canceled on the April 29th, 2022. And it notifies them that they'll be summarily suspended, affected, and that there will be a show cause hearing.
Right, and let's look at the address here. Where was the letter sent?
To the address on file with the commission.
And is that the address that we just saw in the IFMs? We can pull the IFMs back up if we need to see it again.
Yes, it was.
Okay, is this the same address?
Yes, it was.
All right. And so is it your understanding that the respondent received notice of the summary suspension and the proceeding in this letter?
Yes, it would be my understanding that they would have received it.
Okay. And does the letter inform the respondent that the insurance has been canceled?
Yes.
All right. Let's move to exhibit 116 or 115. This next one. And we don't have a redacted version of this one, so it's just one exhibit. Thank you. And we can scroll through it. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
This is the recommended decision of the ALJ regarding revoking authorities and permits.
And what is the date? If we could scroll back up so she could see it. Sorry, thank you. What is the date of the recommended or the mail date reflected on the decision?
June 6, 2022.
Okay, and did you review this document at the time of your investigation?
Yes.
Okay, and is it your practice to maintain documents like this as part of your file?
Yes,
And it's a true and correct copy of the recommended decision that was issued on the mailing date of June 6, 2022.
yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 115.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. I just want to ask one quick question. Are you on, we're on 115 or 116? Because I think I pulled up the 115. Okay. I think I looked at the wrong one. Okay. 115, the commission decision revoking authorities is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we could flip to page 9, please. Right there. Thank you. Actually, if we get, could you scroll this so we get the whole paragraph A in, or most of it? Perfect. Investigator Hazlett, this is the order that the ALJ issued. Can you tell us what the effect of the order was?
That the authorities and the permits listed in Appendix A will be revoked as of the effective date of the decision.
All right. And let's move down to page 14, which is the attachment. And this is the, what are these hearing cycle listings? What is this Appendix A to the order?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's it. What is this appendix that's been attached to the recommended decision?
This is Appendix A. This is all the carriers that were listed in the hearing that did not have current insurance.
Okay. And do you see the respondent's name here?
Yes, I do. It's at the top.
Okay. And what are the cancellation dates?
Cancel date is April 29th, 2022.
And what insurance forms was this respondent missing?
Form E and Form H.
All right. And just so we have a clear record, can you identify the case number for this respondent?
It looks like case number 12758-INS.
Thank you, Investigator Hazlett. I now want to turn and talk to you, and we can take this down, talk to you about the respondent. At some point, did you reach out to the respondent and try to talk to him?
Yes, I did.
All right. How many times did you talk to him?
I talked to him over the phone twice.
All right. Do you remember approximately when you talked to him?
I talked to him March 24th, 2023.
And then you talked to him after that at some point?
Yes, I talked to him again on March 28th, 2023.
Okay. Let's talk about the first conversation on March 24th, I believe you said.
Yes.
And tell me what you discussed in the first phone call.
We discussed many things regarding his permit, his insurance, stamps, the complaint itself about him towing U-Haul vehicles, the markings on his truck, other towing carriers, the invoices. I think I got everything. I could.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Why don't we go through them one? Why don't we go through them one by one and unpack that? So you talked to him about the permit.
Yes.
What did you tell him?
I told him that his permit was revoked, and that he actually acted surprised that his permit was revoked.
So he seemed surprised that he had a revoked permit.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the insurance. It sounds like what were the conversations about the insurance?
Well, I told him that his permit was revoked because of his insurance cancellation, and that he actually did tell me he knew that his permit, or that his insurance was canceled a couple of months after his permit was issued. But he did tell me after that he got a new insurance policy with a new carrier, and that insurance carrier was supposed to send the information to the commission.
So he knew he didn't have insurance.
Correct.
Were you able to determine while you were talking to him whether or not his story was accurate, that he had the insurance carrier file new insurance with commission?
Yeah, he told me the new carrier was supposed to be Mayflower. So while I was talking on the phone, I looked up his IFMs for his permit, and there was no record of any other insurance carrier, Mayflower or any other one. So that I was able to confirm that was not accurate, that nothing was submitted.
I'm sorry, may I interrupt for just one moment? Ms. Hazlett, Mayflower, is that what you said the insurer was?
Yeah, that's what he had told me. It was the
Mayflower.
second company, Mayflower.
PFAR. Just want to make sure I heard correctly. Thank you. I apologize for interrupting.
No, no problem. You said you talked about the stamps, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what first of all, what are vehicle stamps, just so we have a clear record?
So the stamps are the public utilities way of registering or for a carrier to register their vehicle.
And what did he tell you about the stamps?
Well, after I told him that his permit was revoked, he said he wished he knew that earlier because he told me he went to the Public Utilities Commission's office the day before we talked, and he paid $150 for 3 stamps. And I thought that was odd because I don't think anyone with the commission would have taken money for stamps for a revoked permit. So I asked who he talked to, and he said he didn't know the name, but he said it was a female.
We'll follow up with that in a minute. Let's move on. You said you talked about the vehicle markings, Colorado roadside posse on the side of his truck. Tell me about that discussion.
So I asked him why he has Colorado roadside posse on his tow truck, and he said that when he came to Colorado, he started to work for Colorado roadside posse, and when he was working for Colorado roadside posse, one of their trucks had broke down. So Melvin Tolliver took it upon himself to bring his own tow truck to Colorado roadside posse, and was given the markings by Colorado roadside posse to mark his truck.
And was that consistent with what you heard from Colorado roadside posse?
No, that was not consistent.
Okay, let's talk about U-Haul. Did you talk about the U-Haul?
Yes, I asked him about.
Sorry, the 6 tows we were talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I asked him about the complaint about him towing vehicles owned by U-Haul, and I asked him, who gave him authorization, how did he find them, and he didn't really have a clear answer. He just said he was patrolling and found them, and said that he would tow them he would call to see if they were on this hit list, and he said he specifically called Jennifer Reed, and then he would tow them to her. And he told me that he was working as a repossessor on a case-by-case basis.
All right. Did you have an understanding about where he was finding these vehicles?
He said he would just be patrolling around Denver and would locate one, and then he would call it in to see if it was on this hit list.
Okay, and then he suggested that he had some sort of relationship with U-Haul, is that right?
Yes, that's what he had that impression that he was acting on behalf of U-Haul, acting as a repossessor.
All right. And did you talk to him about the invoices at all?
Yes, I asked him about the invoices because there were 2 invoices that were not dated. So I asked him about those, and he told me that he found three U-Haul owned vehicles at one location and towed them separately on that day.
Were you able to determine what day it was for the undated invoices?
Yeah, he told me March 6th.
All right, so did you?
Of 2023.
So even though they were undated, that the 3 vehicles were towed on March 6th?
Yes.
Right. And then he said that he talked to Jennifer Reed. Did he describe the context of the relationship that he had with Jennifer Reed?
He gave the impression that it was a situation where he would call her every time he find a U-Haul. So he would go call her directly.
Okay. Did you ask him about the charges in the invoices at all?
No, I didn't get into the charges.
Okay. Let's talk about the repossession work. Describe for me within the towing context how repossession works, what that concept means.
Well, repossession work is more of a that they are contracted to go find and repossess vehicles to the contracted or owned person and take that vehicle back and take it to its owner.
And he led you to believe that he was involved in repossession work?
Yes, that's what he told me.
Okay. So after you sort of talked how long did you talk to him?
I would say a good amount of time, probably looking close to an hour, maybe.
Close to an hour. When you concluded your conversation, what did you tell him, if anything, about his towing practices?
I told him that he needed to cease and desist all towing operations till he had an active permit. And I told him that he needed to take off the markings for Colorado roadside posse.
All right, so we'll get to the second conversation in a minute. After you finished talking to him, and it sounds like you talked to him for quite a while, did you take any steps to verify what he had told you that you couldn't readily verify on your phone call, like the insurance?
Yes, I looked up what the requirements are for repossession work. I talked to Jennifer Reed again regarding their connection, and talked to Colorado Roadside Posse. Yeah, so, and then also about the stamps.
Okay, let's work through all of those. While you were talking to him, did you have an understanding that he had ever owned any other towing companies or worked for other towing companies?
Yeah, he gave the impression that he had a long history of owning towing carriers in Colorado, and he specifically mentioned a towing carrier called Knights Towing.
Right, let's talk about Knights Towing. If we could pull up Exhibit 116, the redacted version, please. Thank you very much. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
That is the FOMS report for Knights Towing.
All right. And you found and reviewed this document as part of your investigation,
Yes,
and you kept it in your file?
yes,
And it's the practice of PUC investigators to review documents like this and maintain them in their investigative files.
yes,
And it's the practice of the commission to maintain documents like this as part of their business records in the ordinary course of its business.
yes,
Is this document in the same condition or substantially the same condition as when you reviewed it?
yes.
Your Honor, I move the admission of exhibits 116 and 116C.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibits 116 and 116C, the public redacted version and the confidential version will be admitted into evidence. Ms. Whitman, may I just interrupt for one moment? How much more do you think you have with Ms. Hazlett? Do we need to take a break?
It might, I probably have another half hour. So if a break would be,
Okay.
it is 10:30.
I think a break would be good for everyone, especially for our court reporter who needs a little bit of time to wiggle her fingers a little bit.
Understood.
So is this a good time to take a break?
Before we launch into the exhibit, yeah, I think it's actually just fine.
Okay, perfect. Let's take how about a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:47. Is that all right?
That's fine. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. I appreciate it. We are in recess for 10 minutes until 10:47. Okay. It's 10:47. Harriet, are you ready to proceed?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Whitman, are you ready to proceed? She's not quite back yet. We'll just wait. Give her another couple minutes. So, Ms. Whitman, are you back yet? You ready to proceed? There you go.
I am ready. Thank you.
All right. Let's go back on the record after we had our short recess in proceeding number 23G-0227TO. Ms. Whitman, if you want to proceed with your examination of Ms. Hazlett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome back, Investigator Hazlett. We left off with the admission of Exhibit 116 and 116C, and I'd like to ask you a few questions about it. You testified that you reviewed this document, and these are the IFMs for Knight's Towing. Who did you find out Knight's Towing is?
It was a towing carrier owned by Melvin Tolliver.
All right. And what was the status of the permit?
It revoked.
Okay. Let's scroll down through the exhibit. I have a few more questions. And let's talk about the addresses here. Do these addresses, are these different addresses than in the IFMS exhibit and exhibit 111?
Yes, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Okay. And let's go down to page 2. Okay, let's scroll down, please. We've got the address information, we've got the business information. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Was this carrier issued a permit? And you can stop right there.
Yes.
Okay, when was the permit issued?
Looks like January 7th, 2014.
All right, and let's look at the subcategory information. When was the permit canceled at some point?
Yes, it was revoked.
Okay, and when was it revoked?
January 8th, 2020.
All right, if we could scroll down a little more, please. There's a designated agent identified here. Can you tell us who that is?
Melvin Tolliver.
Okay, and I want to move down to page 3, please. All right, and I want to talk about the permit was revoked or classified. Can you tell us why it was revoked?
It was the permit cancellation, and looks like it was revoked because the insurance was canceled.
Right, the cancellation of insurance. And is that reflected on the IFMs under the insurance information?
Yes.
Okay, and let's scroll down a little bit more. And let's go to the show cause paragraph. What does that information reflect?
That there was a show cause hearing after his insurance was canceled.
And then that resulted in the revocation of the permit.
Correct.
All right. I'll just ask you this question. Was the permit, this permit valid when Mr. Tolliver towed the six tows at issue in this case in February and March of 2023?
No.
All right, let's now turn to Exhibit 117. And if I could have the redacted version, please. At some point during your investigation, when you were looking into verifying what Mr. Tolliver had told you, Investigator Hazlett, did you learn that he had been involved with other towing companies that had at one point had commission operating authority?
Yes.
Did you learn of a company called Total Towing?
Yes, I did.
All right, and that's what this exhibit is. Well, what is this document?
It's the IPMS report for Total Towing.
Okay, and did you review this during the time of your investigation?
Yes.
And you maintained it as part of your investigative file?
Yes.
Is it the practice of PUC investigators to keep documents like this in their investigative files?
Yes.
And is it the practice of the commission to maintain documents like this as part of its business records in the ordinary course of its business?
Yes.
Is it in the same condition as when you reviewed it? Or
Yes.
All right, I move for the admission of exhibits 117 and 117C.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibits 117 and 117C, the public redacted versions and the confidential versions of Exhibit 117 are admitted into evidence.
All right, thank you very much, Your Honor. Let's go to page 2, please. Okay, and so was this carrier issued a commission permit?
Yes.
And who's the owner and the designated agent?
Melvin Tolliver.
When was the permit issued?
It looks like in 2003. I don't have the exact date.
Can we scroll down a little bit more so I can see the insurance information? Thank you. And so we have insurance information here. What does this record reflect?
That his permit was canceled, or his insurance was canceled.
Okay, and the cancellation dates were when?
It looks like the first one was September 25th, 2003, and then again on September 2nd, 2021.
Thank you. If you could scroll down a little more, please. Let's look at the show cause information. Can you tell us what happened? What does this part of the record reflect?
That his he had a show cause hearing and is revoked on 10/14/2003.
All right, thank you. We can take this down. I'd like to go back to your follow-up and verifying the information that Mr. Tolliver gave you during your first telephone call with him. And so there were some other items you said that you looked into. Did you call U-Haul back and talk to Jennifer Reed at some point?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Tell me what you discussed with her.
It was actually by email, and
Okay.
so I just asked her about the connection of the possibility that there was some sort of repossession work, or that she gave the impression to Melvin to drive around looking for U-Haul trucks and to repossess them on a case-by-case basis.
And what did you understand after you had that communication?
From my understanding, Jennifer Reed did not give him the impression that she wanted him to drive around looking for U-Haul trucks and take them.
Okay. Did you have an understanding that there was some sort of business agreement or even informal relationship between Mr. Tolliver and U-Haul?
Yeah, from my conversation, it was a definitely no, that she did not want him to work for U-Haul.
Right. Let's talk about the stamps. You mentioned that for a minute. We talked about what the stamps are. Did you verify or try to verify what he told you about the stamps?
Yes, I initially tried to look on IPMS to see if there was any purchase of stamps. And just in case, I contacted our customer care unit with the PUC to see if there was any pending stamp purchase that I'm just not seeing, that hasn't been reflected on the permit. And I was told there was no purchase of stamps for the carrier. And then I also contact the administrative assistant that works at the Public Utilities Commission's office, and he told me that no one came in that week to purchase any stamps, and there was no females that would have helped him, Melvin Tolliver.
All right, so it sounds like you concluded that the stamp transaction didn't happen.
Correct.
Let's talk about the repo list. Just to provide some context, what is the repo list? What does that mean?
So in order to be a repossessor in the state of Colorado, you have to be bonded and insured and be registered with the Attorney General's office. And so the Attorney General's office issues a monthly list of repossessors that are registered per month.
All right, and let's look at that list for this year. Can we pull up Exhibit 118? And there's not a confidential version of this document. And let's scroll through it. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
This is the repossession list for February 2023 and March of 2023.
And did you find and review this document at the time of your investigation?
Yes.
And you maintained it in your file?
Yes.
And it's the practice of investigators to identify this kind of information and review it in the course of their work.
Yes.
And it's the commission's practice to maintain documents like this in their business files.
Yes.
And is this the copy accurate? Is it the same or approximately the same copy you looked at when you conducted your investigation?
Yes.
I move for the admission of Exhibit 118.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibit 118 is admitted into evidence.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. So Ms. Haylett, you said this is the approved list that's issued by the Attorney General's office. You reviewed this list?
Yes.
So did you see Mr. Tolliver's name or his business on the list for either month?
No.
Okay. Did Mr. Tolliver accurately characterize to you what he was doing as far as a repossession, being a repossession tower?
No.
Now we can take this down. Let's now move and talk about your second conversation. So after you found this information back, it sounds like you called him back. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell me about that conversation?
I talked
And
to,
before you start, can you remind me again when the second conversation was?
yes, March 28th.
Thank you. And I didn't interrupt you. Go ahead. What did you talk about?
I asked him if he took down the markings off of his truck for Colorado Roadside Posse. And I also talked to him about the addresses on the invoice.
Okay. Let's talk about the markings from the truck. What did he say when you asked him if he removed it?
He said that he had called Ben Pearson after our conversation on March 24th. And he told me that he was going to sell his tow truck to Ben Pearson. So he has not taken the markings down pending the sale.
All right. Did you confirm that with Ben Pearson?
I did contact Ben Pearson, and Ben said that he did not say that he was going to purchase the vehicle.
Okay, so he wasn't able to confirm what Mr. Tolliver said.
Correct.
Right. Let's talk about the invoices. What did you discuss about the invoices?
I was trying to get a more of a good location for where the tows occurred, because the invoices are unreadable and they don't really accurately depict where a tow occurred. So when I went through, he wasn't able to recall where he found the vehicles. And so when I asked if he could pull up his copy of the invoices, he told me that they were stolen out of his truck that weekend prior to our conversation. But then he also said that he was going to check his storage lot. So it was a lot of conflicting information, but he did say they were stolen. His briefcase was stolen with the invoices.
Okay, and so the upshot, was he able to confirm where the vehicles were towed from?
No.
Because they were stolen from his truck?
Correct. Yeah, the invoices were stolen from his truck.
Okay. Did you ask him to go follow up with and try to find them in his files elsewhere?
Yeah, he talked about some sort of storage unit that he had that he would try to follow up and see if he had them in his storage unit. No, he never called me back.
Okay, now remind me, do the commission's rules require that a towing contractor identify the address of the origin of a tow?
Correct.
All right. Let's now, I want to talk to you about the conclusions you drew in your investigation. When did you finish the investigation?
I would say in April of 2023.
All right, and what did you conclude after you reviewed all the information?
I concluded that he did not have a active permit to tow in the state of Colorado and did not have insurance on file with the commission.
And did you then find violations of the commission's statutes with regard to those two issues?
Yes.
Did you did staff issue a CPAN in this case?
Yes.
All right, let's look at the CPAN, and that's exhibit 120 and 120C. Thank you. And good, this is the redacted version. Investigator Hazlett, what is this document?
That is the CPAN that I issued to Melvin Tolliver, the respondent.
Did you prepare the CPAN?
Yes, it did.
Okay, and it's your practice as an investigator for the commission to prepare documents like this and keep them in your file?
Yes.
It's the commission's practice to maintain documents like this as part of its business records.
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibits 120 and 120C.
Oops. Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibits 120 and 120C, the confidential and the public redacted versions of Exhibit 120 are admitted into evidence.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Hazlett, how many violations has staff alleged in the CPAN?
9 violations.
Okay, and can you describe for us, there are 2 categories of violations. What are they?
So the first category is the statute for having no permit, no towing carrier permit, and the second one is having no insurance.
All right, and the dates on the CPAN, do they reflect the dates that you understand that the tows occurred?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the March 6th date. Did you at some point talk to Mr. Tolliver about when he towed the vehicles for the on the undated invoices?
Yes, that was the first conversation I had with him on March 24th.
And what did he tell you?
He told me when I asked him about the undated invoices that he towed 3 vehicles on March 6th.
Okay, so then did you conclude then that for the undated invoices that those tows did occur on March 6th?
Yes.
All right. And I won't have you read each one of these, but it appears that violations 1 through, and if you could scroll down a little bit, please. 1 through, and keep going. Thank you. Stop right there. 1 through, well, no, actually, let's hang on. So violations, I'll look at my own copy here. Violations 1 through 5 involve violations because the respondent did not have insurance on file with the commission when he performed the tows on the identified dates.
It's actually 1 through 4.
My bad. I knew I'd get it wrong. 1 through 4. Thank you. Is that right?
Yes, for no insurance, right?
And then the remaining violations are for the tows performed without having a permit.
Yes.
And now I know you only cited him for the 2 statutes. Did you find other violations of the towing statutes and rules that could apply to the respondent?
Yes, there were many other violations per the towing carrier rules, but I concentrated on no permit, no insurance.
All right. And what is the total amount for the CPAN?
It is, if you don't mind scrolling down, I don't remember. I remember it's $56,925.
Okay. And do you have an understanding that the respondent paid any portion of the CPAN?
He did not.
It's a large CPAN. Do you think the fine is warranted in this case.
Yes, I do.
And we'll talk about why in a minute. Let's talk about how you served the CPAN. So tell me what happened.
So on May 4th, myself and investigator Joseph Potts went to a Best Western on North Peoria Street in Denver. And I had investigator Potts call Melvin Tolliver and to tell him that we were broke down in the parking lot. And that was an address that he had lived prior. So investigator Potts gave the impression that we got his name from the clerks at the hotel, and we told him we were broke down and we needed to tow to a garage in the local area. And so he said he would do it, and he came and met us at the back of the Best Western, and he showed up in that tow truck that was pictured in the photograph that Jennifer Reed supplied, and I identified the driver as Melvin Tolliver, and I served the CPAN to him.
So did you watch him sign the CPAN?
Yes, at first he wouldn't sign it, and I tried to advise him that it was just an acknowledgement of receipt of the CPAN and that he was obtaining a copy himself. And then he finally decided that he would sign it, and so that's his mark that he put on the CPAN, and then he also put some sort of date on the CPAN also. So that is his. I saw him mark it and date it.
Okay, good. Yeah, there you can't really. There's no signature, so I just wanted to. So you saw him make the mark.
Correct.
And so he acknowledged receiving it.
Right.
Let's turn to Exhibit 119, and this is our last one. And what are these documents?
Those are photographs taken by investigator Joseph Potts while I was serving Melvin the CPAN. He was taking pictures of the truck for me.
And were you present and did you watch investigator Potts take these photographs?
Yes.
Are they true and accurate representations of this vehicle when you served the CPAN in May?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 119.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Exhibit 119 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's look at these. What are we looking at here, Ms. Investigator Hazlett?
This is the tow truck that Melvin Tolliver showed up to the Best Western to tow our vehicle.
And this would have been after your conversation with him, your conversations in March, correct?
Correct.
And this would have been after you told him to remove Colorado roadside posse's marks from the side of the vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
It appears that they're still here.
Yes.
All right. You saw the exhibit in 101 that Jennifer Reed took, and that was a photo of the same truck. When you saw this truck, and we can pull up 101 again if you need to see it, do you believe this is the same vehicle as in exhibit 101?
Yes, definitely. It has the same markings, it has the same number that's on there.
Yeah, okay. And then this would have been the vehicle that performed the 6 tows that are issued in this case.
Yes.
And that Mr. Tolliver, the respondent, and his companies were the ones that towed the vehicles, the U-Hauls.
Yes.
I'm now going to move and talk to you about mitigating and aggravating circumstances in this case. Are you aware of any facts that would mitigate or serve in mitigation to the fine that staff is requesting in this CPAN?
No.
All right, let's talk about aggravating circumstances in this case. The staff believe that there are aggravating circumstances that warrant the full imposition of the fine.
Yes.
Can you describe for me what you believe they are?
Well, I believe this it shows a pattern of owning towing carriers and changing the names after the insurance is canceled. He continues to tow after the permit is revoked and after the insurance is canceled. He has done this numerous times, so this just shows a pattern that he doesn't care. He gets a permit, insurance is canceled, and he just continues to tow under that name.
And let me talk to you. I know that Mr. Tolliver cooperated initially in the investigation. Did you attempt to reach out to him again to try to talk to him about this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay, can you tell me what happened?
I attempted to call him several times, and each time I called, I would get his voicemail. So then I left a message and I wouldn't get a return call. So then I tried blocking my number using *67, and he did someone picked up that number or that phone call, and I left my message and he didn't return my call.
So at some point, did he stop communicating with you?
Yes, after I talked with him on March 28th, I did attempt to, meet him in person and try to, for him to view the invoices, and nothing. No communication.
Mr. Tolliver may still be operating?
I'm sorry, what?
You have an understanding that Mr. Tolliver may still be operating?
Yes, I believe he is still operating.
Finally, I'd like to discuss what staff is requesting that the ALJ do in this case. Can you please tell us what relief staff is requesting today?
I'm requesting for him to pay the full CPAN and to give him a cease and desist order.
As well as pay any refunds owed to U-Haul?
Oh, yes, and pay refunds to U-Haul. Sorry.
That's just want to make sure we included everything. Thank you very much, Investigator Hazlett. Your Honor, I don't have any more questions for this witness.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitman. Let me check my notes really quickly. I think I had a few things jotted down, but I think you ended up covering them and I don't have any questions, but let me just confirm. And just bear with me for just one moment. No, the questions I had noted you covered and have been answered, so I don't have any additional questions for Ms. Hazlett.
Very good, Your Honor. We don't have any other witnesses, so staff would rest at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whitman. Since there's no respondent, we don't have to worry about respondent presenting his case, so that will then conclude the evidentiary portion of this hearing, unless there's something else you need to cover, Ms. Whitman.
If I could confer briefly with my co-counsel, I do not believe there's anything else.
Do you want to take a quick recess so you could do that?
Maybe a couple minutes.
A couple minutes?
No,
Absolutely.
I know we're good. So thank you. We don't need a couple minutes. We're just fine. Thank you.
Okay. So that concludes then the staff's presentation of its case. It concludes the evidentiary portion of this hearing. Did you want to make any kind of a closing statement, Ms. Whitman?
Briefly, I would, please.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. In summary, Title 40, Article 10.1 provides that the towing carriers operating in Colorado must have an active permit with Colorado Public Utilities Commission and the appropriate levels of insurance on file with the commission. The two statutes at issue here are Colorado Revised Statute Section 40-10.1-4011A. That provides that a person shall not operate to operate as a towing carrier in interstate commerce without first having obtained a permit from the commission. In the CPAN alleges counts in 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9 that the respondent towed multiple vehicles and performed 6 tows of vehicles owned by U-Haul between February 24th and March 20th of this year. He did not have a valid permit at this time, and he didn't have insurance. The evidence in this case reflects that Jennifer Reed, who is an employee of U-Haul, saw the U-Haul vehicle towed by the respondent, took a photograph, and later interrogated him about why he had one of their vehicles. The vehicle that towed the vehicles is in Exhibit 101, or the U-Haul vehicle is in Exhibit 101. The respondent misrepresented his relationship with U-Haul to Ms. Reed and told her that he had the authority and U-Haul's authority to tow the vehicles. He did not. Respondent provided Reed with this towing invoices, and then he towed subsequent vehicles, which were identified with his company's name, Final Notice Towing and Recovery, which we now understand is a DBA for Rapid Response Towing. And she didn't authorize any of these tows, and she was pretty clear about it in her testimony. She also paid for each of these tows because she, as she suggested in her testimony, seemed to feel like she was being held hostage by Mr. Tolliver and that she wasn't going to get her vehicles back. And she was trying to, as she said, quote unquote, keep the peace and not create additional problems. Investigator Hazlett became involved at some point after Ms. Reed reported these strange events to the commission, and she confirmed that the respondent did not have a valid permit issued by the commission at the time any of these tows were performed. The IFMs in Exhibit 111 show that the respondent didn't have a valid permit, and that in fact his permit had been canceled because he did not keep adequate levels of insurance on file with the commission. The evidence further shows that his permit was summarily suspended on April 29, 2022 because of the insurance issue, and that ultimately the ALJ in the show cause action issued a recommended decision revoking the permit. So he hasn't had insurance since June 28, 2022. Despite not having any operating authority, it's undisputed that he can still continue to operate and to tow vehicles, as these 6 tows reflect. The respondent's tows are illegal tows. He also doesn't have insurance. The relevant statute here is Colorado Revised Statute Section 40-10.1-1071, which provides that each motor carrier shall maintain and file with commission evidence of financial responsibility in such sum for such protection and in such form as the commission may by rule require as the commission deems necessary to adequately safeguard the public interest. The first 4 counts in the CPAN claim that respondent did not have any active insurance policies on file with the adequate levels at the time he performed these tows in February and in March. And the evidence bears that out. The IFMs in Exhibit 111, as well as the testimony of Investigator Hazlett, and the exhibits that reflect that the respondent's permit was revoked by order of commission in the summer of 2022, and he did not have any insurance on file when he performed these tows. So these were illegal tows. Investigator Hazlett didn't find any mitigating factors in this case, and indeed, all of the factors are aggravating. There are many. He performed multiple tows without a valid permanent insurance. We know that the respondent has incorporated at least 3 towing companies, which have had operating authority from the commission at some point, in which he got a permit, and then shortly after let the insurance lapse. It shows a pattern and practice of failure to comply with the commission's statutes and rules. And this is reflected in Exhibits 116 and 117. The respondent provided at best inaccurate information to Investigator Hazlett, and at worst, misleading information to Investigator Hazlett about his relationship with U-Haul, about his relationship with Colorado Roadside Posse, and he made false statements to Jennifer Reed about how the tows in this case originated. So, and this is a large number of tows. We're talking about 6 tows here. It isn't 1. So the number of the illegal tows and the misrepresentations warrant the imposition of the maximum civil penalty in this case. Therefore, staff respectfully request that the ALJ issue a recommended decision ordering that the respondent pay a full refund to U-Haul for all of the tows, finding that the respondent violated each count of the CPAN, ordering that the respondent pay the entire fine amount identified in the CPAN, and that the respondent cease and desist from all towing activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Whitman, for that summation. We are then adjourned. We have completed this hearing, and I thank all of you for your presentations and your thorough investigation of this matter. We are adjourned for the afternoon, or I guess it's still morning. We're adjourned, and enjoy the rest of your day. You have all afternoon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a good day.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Whitman. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, and thank you, Ms. Hazlett. And thank you, Mr. Swint, who I see was on the call for a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, Harriet. Thanks, Stephanie. Anything else I need to do? You good?
Yep, we're good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. That was a lot of exhibits going up and down today, I know.
It's good. Thanks.
All right. Have a good afternoon.